Welcome to Stepping Stones to Awareness show. It's a constitutional issue. We're looking at the court system. I'm Caroline Stevens, and today I've got John Hurst and Frazer Rees live here in the studios. We've just been hearing from France that the lawyers supporting the yellow vests have actually been arrested themselves. So with that in our minds, over to you, John. What's your take on all of this?
Well, not a lot of people are aware, but barristers, British barristers, are in fact a major protection and check on overmighty government. There's a legal fiction that a barrister is self-employed, and money he gets is expenses. Some of them have their robes, and they have a symbolic pocket on the back, and that's where their tip or their expenses should be deposited, and they pretend not to notice.
This is not real, everybody. This is a joke.
Okay.
A bit like you saying me being born in a decade before I really was.
That's right.
I wasn't funny.
The barristers last impartial
lost your train of thought there,
impartial part of the system. We have a Crown Prosecution Service, we have the police that act in the name of the Crown, we have the courts that are the Crown courts, but the barristers are independent. They work
so hang on, so the barristers are independent, but the Crown Prosecution Service is actually a corporation?
Well, any government, the government, the Crown can be a corporation as well. Yes, it's the individual, the Queen, and the Crown Corporation, on the subject of barristers, they work on the cab rank principle traditionally, which means whatever crime comes along, prosecute, defend, popular cause, unpopular cause, they would give it their best shot. Their oath is similar to a policeman's oath. Their oath of office says, "I'll do my best according to law." If ever we had a state defending system, that would be a tyranny. And unfortunately, that's what they have in France. There are state prosecutors and state defenders, and examining magistrates fulfil the function in many ways of policemen. Examining magistrates investigate cases and actually go out and arrest suspects, and the police just acts as support. Who gets to be an examining magistrate is the question, isn't it? As Stalin once said, it's not the votes that count; it's who counts the votes.
That's very true.
Recall that one. So whether I have a lot of sympathy for a French lawyer.
Well, of course, now we're seeing this played out now, the differences in our legal system, where in France you've got the Napoleonic Code.
Indeed.
And so they're just sweeping up the lawyers, sweeping up the yellow vests, and just car parking them somewhere, surely.
Well, a few years ago, a man called Torquil Dick Erickson, who was as British as can be, despite
know him.
Yes, you've met him.
He lives in Rome.
Oh, he travelled around and he was warning us on the continental legal system.
Yeah.
And he said in continental countries that the being arrested by the police is regarded as a hazard like bad weather. Have you seen Francois? No, the police have him. That's right. Which is completely different to here. So we need to maintain standards. But
of course, we've still got the European arrest warrant, though, haven't we?
A constitutional outrage. The way that was managed in the police, I was serving when it came in, was that only specially trained constables will get involved with it, because quite a few are subjected in actual fact. So the way the police manage that like that is having a specialist team, and their activities are kept quiet from the rest of us.
It looks like you're sort of judging us both, looking one side, one side.
I've just been in South America quite a long time, so some of the names that you guys are mentioning I'm not familiar with, so I'm kind of playing catch up at the minute, because I've been dealing with Colombian and Venezuelan law, which is totally different. And
would they arrest you and keep you imprisoned? Pretty much.
Who? There's the who's who over there has been my problem, is trying to figure out who is who. Because you've got, police, you've got guerrillas, you've got paracos, paramilitares, you've got all sorts of different factions, and it's, kind of like where this country seems to be heading at this rate. It's not good, but they're facing the same kind of problems that we are in this country, clarifications of law, the same kind of corruption and so on and so forth at top levels. So this international law is been a big subject of mine, working internationally when it comes to. Company set up, be it, walking down the street and, what are my rights? And I've come back to this country and I really haven't had a clue where I kind of stood.
So we don't know where we stand anymore, do we, John?
That is the problem. The tyrants have had many thousand years' experience and they know how to do it. One of the important things to bear in mind is that the gendarme and the carabinieri are an institution that's unknown to our common law because they're soldiers who police the public, they police civilians.
Military police in essence.
No, our military police only have a power of arrest for soldiers.
Right, but the ones in France are police.
Completely different. They have soldiers deploying weapons routinely. I don't know if you're familiar with the Euro Gendarmerie Force, Eurogend 4. Torquil Dick Erickson brought this to notice. It's flexible because in the event of they need reinforcements, the continental countries that have gendarmes can supply. And one of the aspects of the Nice Treaty, which is not well known, is that Euro Gendarmerie forces deployed in other countries where the interests of the EU are threatened. They have two powers which are unknown to us. They have diplomatic immunity, which means they can do what the hell they like and they can't be touched. And the other is they have the death penalty because killing in defence of the European Union is rendered lawful by the Lisbon Treaty.
This is
not a lot of people.
You mentioned people doing what they wanted and they can't be touched. Isn't that like our parliamentarians?
Well, they get away with it as long as the system's working to protect them. But at the end of the day, the population, when they get wise, will start to rise up. We've talked about lawful rebellion, haven't we?
Yeah.
The concept of lawful...
Is rebellion ever lawful?
Well, it's not only lawful, it's a duty. And the reason is every able-bodied male has a duty to maintain the Queen's peace. And the definition of the Queen's peace, the traditional definition is the good order that ought to prevail in society. So anything from football hooliganism is disorder, but from football hooliganism upwards.
Right,
so overthrowing the constitution, incarcerating people for no good reason, Melanie Shaw, for example, really is that's unlawful, and something should be done about it.
And I think so. Same with David Noakes as well.
Indeed, yes, that's right.
They've produced statutory laws that are going against people.
Well, we discussed that earlier. The coronation oath is cunningly worded. The oath that Her Majesty took and the wording of the Coronation Oath Act 1689 differ. I've referred to John Bringley's research. This is where
the Bill of Rights.
This is where we first found out about it. The Coronation Oath, the first question the Archbishop asks is to the candidate, will you rule the kingdom according to its laws, customs and statutes agreed on? And that means that he or she can't give royal assent to an Act of Parliament which infringes the laws and customs. And that means the common law can't be repealed. Now, for a generation or two, Parliament has claimed it's supreme. You've heard the phrase Parliament is supreme? That's put about by parliamentarians. It's put about by lawyers who are ignorant, for the reasons given in the last talk, that lawyers haven't been trained in constitutional law.
Actually, can I just point out there that we have this other parallel system, haven't we, about Freemasons in the judiciary and in Parliament?
The issue with Freemasons is the matter of oaths, because they take a blood-curdling oath of loyalty to other Freemasons. Your tongue will be cut out.
Sorry to interject and interrupt you, John. Yeah. Isn't this similar to what you've been saying about the different, the Jesuits, the Zionists?
Yeah, it's exactly the same. Exactly the same. Article 45 of Magna Carta is quite clear. The Crown may have as servants none but true men who know the law and are minded to keep it well. So there's an educational qualification and there's a trust qualification.
So they've basically been airbrushing the common law out of the history books almost.
Indeed. You remember I referred to the one of the protocols of the Elders Design said we should remove knowledge of the law from the people, and the strategy has been to scoop up history books and law books. Antiquarian bookshops created tremendous value for this obscure, dusty tome.
Well, of course, bookshops themselves are becoming a thing of the past. There aren't that many of them around. Yeah. It's not profitable for them.
There's talk of not teaching children to write manually with a pen, for example, which means they won't be able to read anything handwritten. Red Ice Radio, I'm a big fan of. A couple of years ago, had a talk about a man called John Dewey. So John Dewey is a leading educationalist in the United States. In the early 1900s, he wants to standardise methods of teaching reading. And the alternatives, you're a teacher, aren't you? Phonics and look and say. Yep. English is a phonetic language, and we've got a limited range of characters, and each one produces a sound. Look and say is words have shape. The ultimate in look and say, in actual fact, is the Chinese character writing. It's pictographic. They'll have a picture rather than letters. Dewey's experiments, according to the article on Red Ice Radio, the least effective method of teaching English to Caucasians was look and say, but it was deliberately adopted on Dewey's recommendation to lower the educational standard, and that's why you have large amounts of dyslexia. Phonics has gradually been brought back on the mainland, hasn't it? Here, you aware of that?
Yes.
And that's because the results were so bad.
So are you saying then that the qualifications these days that the kids are coming out of school with are of a lower standard than perhaps, say, in the 60s?
It's self-evident, and if you were to go online, you can find exam papers from 1880 and that sort of thing, and they're regarded as degree level now. Standards have dropped. Are you familiar where the present education system came from? The Prussian system.
The Prussian system.
Okay. The traditional common law method of educating is that you have imagine a Victorian schoolhouse, and you have maybe 20 children, and they're of all ages. And the older ones assist the teacher to teach the younger. The teacher would usually be a lady, the children cooperate and learn collectively. When they reach
they're all different age groups, aren't they, in the same classroom?
Mixed ability. The older children assist the younger. When they reach the age of 14, the girls typically go into service or factory occupation, and the boys become apprentices. Okay, so the Prussian system was adopted from 1820. Prussia is in the northern part of Germany. In the period up to 1820, Germany had a series of civil wars. They were particularly vicious, and the Prussians came out on top because they were the best fighters. And the Prussians adopted a system of generating essentially factory fodder and cannon fodder. And it's the origin of, for example, classes are set by age. So you're in a classroom with a group of children who know as little as you do. Lessons are all focused on the teacher at the front. The teacher is the only source of knowledge. Bell rings to change lessons, so children are accustomed to act like Pavlov's dogs. They drill and organise PT all together and that sort of thing. And then the first degree, the PhD and so on, are all part of it. And the first degree and the PhD, particularly the PhD, it focuses on a tiny area, preferably so tiny that nobody else has thought of it before, and you end up with people who are accustomed to toe the party line.
But we've also got the university side these days. A lot of students are doing courses which, do they bear any relevance to their future after university?
Again, that's in the protocols of the elder design. Empty education, as long as people cooperate. It's blatantly political. We mentioned Jordan Peterson, didn't we? I understand you're going to interview him in the near future.
Hope so.
If you get the opportunity. It's not often you meet a man who is inspiring as he is. So anybody gets an opportunity to watch. He's a Canadian professor of psychology. His grasp is of psychology and also statistics. So for example, he talks bell curves and normal distribution and statistically significant tests and that sort of thing. And he's got tremendous memory, and there's a whole library of his lectures going back the last 20 years, apparently, some 300. He's travelled around the world over the last 18 months. Initially, he came to notice because he was accused of breaking an obscure Canadian law. And the law said if you're transgender or some such, it was made a crime to call you by a name you don't like, a descriptor. And Jordan Peterson made the point that the common law doesn't tell people what to do. What it does, it specifies certain deeds to be unlawful, and then calls them crimes and attaches to punishment. His legal and philosophical argument went from there, and he's now become an internet phenomenon.
Right, so maybe let's hope I get to interview him.
Indeed,
but anyway, the name of this session was going to be Tracy and the justice system.
Tracy and the justice system.
I remembered.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
We always find that lawyer type people. They can talk for England.
Right. I know, I've still got
and they can talk for the Constitution.
My spelling in English being affected by my Welsh, learning Welsh as a child, going back to the phonetics and stuff. So anyway, let's just not get distracted.
Tracy Blackwell is a phenomenon such as yourself. A woman who's awake, confident, articulate, and brave. I'm trying to get some
those five.
That's after he insulted you in the last show.
Keep going.
What happened was back in January, one of her sons, with 3 others, is walking down the road at Hayes in Middlesex.
That's right.
A car mounts the pavement, drives some 200 yards straight into them, kills 3, seriously injures 2. Driver gets out and staggers off. This is all in the news, so it's not sub judice. The citizen's arrest is done, and the driver's arrested. The passenger escapes, within 2 hours, the Metropolitan Police make an announcement: there is no terrorist involvement. The investigation has only gone down the traffic accident route, and what they've done is they've excluded the whole body of evidence that's been gathered. In the age of the internet, the families can do research that previously wouldn't have been practical. So, for example, the police have claimed that there weren't any CCTV cameras that likely have caught the images, and they found 32. But
this is normal for our justice system these days, isn't it? I mean,
well,
the collusion, and we've heard so many cases of the police lying in courts. You didn't say anything now,
that's the generalisation. The consequences for a policeman being caught out lying are so serious. It's the end of career, end of pension potentially.
Well,
but if it's going to be done, it's not going to be done lightly.
So
it's
the
a
Tracy
culmination
case,
of factors. What I'm seeing, because I've been fortunate enough to be
you were there at the court system, weren't you, this week?
So what you describe as lying is either possibly noble cause corruption. They think they're doing the right thing, or it's incompetence. Now you have to bear in mind that the recruiting standards. Now, if you want to hear me talking about police recruiting, if you look at a video called John Hurst at Wigan, a suburb of Manchester, a couple of years ago, I explain what happened. But it's essentially this: the Frankfurt School of Political Correctness was applied to police recruitment and training.
Is it?
Yes, yeah. And what the Frankfurt School requires is that previous traditions forgotten and new what we call politically correct criteria applied. These phenomena have applied to all government services, and they're basically implemented by common purpose graduates. You're aware what a common purpose graduate is?
I certainly do.
Yeah. If you research it, Brian Gerrish was a lead researcher on this.
Yeah, I've interviewed Brian.
Yeah. What happens is when the government wants something done, they appoint a judge or an official of some sort to write a report, and of course it's predetermined what they want. So about 25 years ago, a man called Sheehy, who was a manager of a supermarket chain, gets the job of investigating the policeman's job, the basic constable's job, and he came to the conclusion that the skill set required of a constable, what a surprise, is about equivalent to a supermarket cashier. Okay, so from that point onwards, the recruiting.
Are they called wooden tops?
Well, CID call them wooden tops, and if they not in my earshot, they wouldn't anyway. So recruiting standards have changed. The first is the policy of not recruiting anybody with a greater than average IQ, because they'll get bored, except for graduate entrants, which means they can select high-functioning sociopaths if they wish.
I thought they were in old politics then.
Sorry?
I thought they were in politics. So
not all of them. Not all of them. Yes, yeah, that's right. So then they do away with educational standards. In my day, it was 5 O levels, including maths and English, at least grade C. Now there isn't any, because it's unfair to nationalities that don't have exam systems. Criminal records couldn't be checked because they recruit foreigners, and you can't check a.
That's true. I know the taxi drivers in this area. Yeah. The council haven't been able to.
Yes, that's right.
Vet their past.
Yeah, that's right.
Forgive me if I'm wrong, John, but there seems to be some synergies to me, and it's across the board. They've been, not only have they lowered the entrance levels and so on, but they've also made the system and the actual sort of acts of Parliament to make it difficult for the actual police to even do their jobs. Is that correct?
Well, yeah,
to an extent.
I would say, but I'll just talk about recruiting. So the next thing is that physical standards, male as for female. So the male recruits do the same PT test as the female. So you get weedy men. They do away with the height limit because it's unfair to shorter nationalities. So
you've got everything equal.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, yeah. Okay. And then these recruits go to training school. And at training school, traditionally the training school sergeant was an old crusty with 28 years service, and he'd spent his last 2 years teaching the recruits 9 to 5, no stress, and ride off into the sunset. 2 lesbians are posted as sergeants to the training school. They're into public displays of affection, and they're into holding hands as they skip down the corridors. A lot of the crusty old sergeants had something to say about this. The two lesbians say nothing for about 3 months, and then it transpires they've got a black book, and suddenly the traditional sergeant is replaced with the new breed. The new breed then provided with the recruits of the new standard, and the training goes from the training manuals were textbooks, legal textbooks with an internal manual for police procedure, to distant learning packages. It's down to from 20 weeks, 16-hour days, to in some forces as little as 10 weeks, and mostly 9 to 5 and distance learning packages. The final exams are abolished. The intermediate exams are abolished. The swimming tests, for example, in my day, there's an Olympic-sized swimming pool at the training school, and you had to learn to swim if you couldn't swim, and fish out a rubber block from the bottom of the deep end. And if you didn't get it out, you didn't pass the whole course. I took 2 goes. I'm not a very strong swimmer, and that sort of thing. There was boxing, milling, 3 minutes in a ring with somebody your size. That all went, and so the sort of person you get is a low IQ, low height, mainly female, rule following, jobs worth, and then you put them into contact with the public. Now, the recruiting process, as a result of the Sheehy inquiry, not the Sheehy, the Lawrence inquiry. Remember Stephen Lawrence?
I do. Yeah. She's now his
lord.
Mother's a lord now.
That's right.
And she's part of a big charity, and
Yeah.
they're. Am I right in thinking that they're actively recruiting? It's a very unequal system there. They're actively recruiting from abroad.
Well, they were able to do that. The 1996 Police Act changed the oath. The traditional oath is, I'll serve Her Majesty, my Sovereign Lady the Queen in the office of Constable without fear or favour. Sovereign Lady the Queen without fear or favour. It was changed to the Queen, and then there's some human rights gobbledygook. And what that allows is foreigners to join, because for a Frenchman to say the Queen was his sovereign lady would be treason to France, for example. So it allows foreigners to join.
Doesn't this go back to the point that you mentioned earlier on, John, about hereditary and being part of your grandfather?
Denizens.
Saying,
yeah.
Sorry,
They've abolished the denizen rule. The denizen rule is that a person who wasn't a British subject shouldn't be given a position of trust under the Crown.
And that brings up the nationality, donde naciste, where you were born, which is your nationality.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
So they then apply the system to internal promotions and transfers. So those are already in; they get subject to it. Recruits at training school in day one are told that there's an informer in the class recruited by the complaints department, and if you say anything racist, sexist, homophobic, all the usual things, you're out. And then finally, when they're posted to division, it used to be that older constables, I was one, was called a mentor, and you take new constable under the ring and go out and show them the ropes. And that system was abolished, and only people that have been trained under the new system were allowed to train the new recruits. And the recruits were told specifically not to take notice of the old crusties, because what do they know? What I found, in fact, there's about 1 in 3 of new recruits after about 18 months would start waking up, and they start.
So they've done pretty much with the constitutional law the same thing they've done with the policing system and the judicial system.
That's right.
You're not learning from your elders anymore.
Yes, that's right. Yes, yeah.
They've taken bits out of it.
And the police is like the army, which is an institution which was going many thousands a year. Well, the police haven't perhaps, but law enforcement in general has. And there's a certain institutional knowledge that's been passed from generation to generation. If you met a Roman centurion, he'd probably be very similar to a British sergeant major, because they're the same job, and all that information was lost. Like myself, I was only allowed to work to 30. Well, I didn't want to work any more than that, because I knew that if you were
30 years of service.
That's right. There was a policy. You could be asked to stay on, but the sort of people that were asked to stay on would be those that were towing the party line. So.
You turned political at that stage. Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
So thanks for clarification. It's just a lot to try and put into place.
That's right.
So going back to the Tracy case.
Yeah. So anyway,
which is the title of this.
Okay. So it goes like this.
It's all relevant. That's really very.
Okay. Now all this is happening, and what it's produced is an ineffective police force. They're ineffective in the physical sense. If 50% are female, and 90% of violent criminals are male, what's going to happen? Violent criminals aren't going to get arrested, are they? Because the issue is a policeman has to.
You've got to be able to apprehend them.
Walk up to somebody and say you're nicked and mean it.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, haven't you?
Yeah.
And of course that's not happening. And all sorts of excuses are being found, but criminals have now got the upper hand, because the point about a criminal is he deals with policemen on a regular basis and he treats them as an individual. respectable lady motorist gets stopped for speeding, and she'll be nervous because she's not used to talking to a policeman. A criminal regards the policeman as an individual. Can I beat him in a fight? Can I have him over? What weapons have I got in my pocket he doesn't know about? And so on. Completely different ball game. And it's exacerbated by the fact that different nationalities react to the police in the way that their home police act.
Yeah.
So let's say you stop a Somali lad back home. If they have police in Somalia, there'll be something along the line of gendarmes. They'll have at least an AK-47 and a bayonet to hand. And for a Somali lad to have an encounter with the police in Somalia is a life-threatening event as far as he's concerned.
Yeah, same in South America.
That's right. Yes, indeed. Yes, yeah, that's right. Yeah. So the ante is considerably higher, and it just says that to stab somebody. See what I do, Caroline? If I had an edged weapon, he's dead. That's how quick real life is. So you have to be extremely careful.
Because the police are normally trying to there. I got robbed by the police.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah,
that's right. So what we've got a system where the police have become institutionally ineffective. The common law term is inefficient. In the police, everyone's a constable because we have a constable's power of arrest, and the ranks are administrative, and the ranks are intended to organise the police in an efficient manner. What's happened is you've got commissioners of police who have allowed the force to become completely inefficient whilst promoting their let's have more females, let's have more midgets agenda. And it's manifested itself in things like the Tracy inquiry, where several policemen working together haven't organised themselves sufficiently to do their duty. And we need to talk about what a policeman's duty is. A policeman's duty arises from the fact that he's an able-bodied man. No more, no less. Everyone has the power of arrest, and everyone's expected to maintain the Queen's peace. And it's not voluntary, it's compulsory in actual fact. A person who doesn't comply with a statutory or common law duty commits an offence of public nuisance. Okay? So that's where it comes from. A constable has an enhanced power of arrest because it's necessary in order to investigate crimes that he hasn't witnessed personally. It goes like this. A private person can arrest when a crime has happened. A constable could arrest something he hasn't witnessed if he's just been told about it. Because otherwise, a constable with only a private power of arrest wouldn't dare arrest anybody in case he got it wrong. He could get in trouble. Because he's
on trial, in essence, upholding the law.
That's right.
Right.
So the modern constable's power of arrest is based on common law and statute. And the Act of Parliament is the Police and Criminal Evidence Act of 1984. And if you look at Section 24, it says, arrest without warrant constables. A constable may arrest somebody if he reasonably suspects an offence has been committed and a person is reasonably suspected to be guilty of it. It's the two reasonables. If he thinks an offence has happened, he thinks the person did it. Now, the word may in an Act of Parliament, what do you think that means, may in an Act of Parliament?
Must.
You have to think about it. In legalese, there are two languages in play here. One's English and one's legalese, and they have different meanings. So in certain circumstances, the word may in an Act of Parliament means must. And it means must when you've got a victim petitioning the Crown for redress of grievance. So let's say somebody's being robbed, and she says to a policeman, that person over there robbed me. I want you to arrest him. The transaction is that the lady, the victim, is petitioning the Crown for redress of grievance because the policeman's acting on behalf of the Crown, and his duty is to assist her with a private prosecution. For that reason, he's given the power of arrest. He may arrest, but because one of Her Majesty's subjects is aggrieved, it becomes a must. So he must arrest the other person.
Public servants.
And in the Tracy case, in the Tracy case, that didn't happen. So you've got victims giving extra evidence to say, well, it's not a traffic matter. There's evidence that suggests it's a criminal matter. Facebook pages, for example.
So had the person, the perpetrator,
Can I just interject at this point, because this is very, very serious, it's very, very real, and the reason Tracy was so courageous and all the things that John has said about her and herself are true, she was outspoken because she's passionate, because this person has mounted the pavement. We went down and we saw the scene of the crime, and it was a crime.
You saw the footage?
No, we saw the evidence.
We've spoken to multiple witnesses. We have to be careful what we say because it's sub judice. So, what do you do with a modern policeman that's ineffective? What can you do? Well, you can complain to the police management, you can complain to the IPCC.
You complain to the actual county complaints department, but then they actually go back to the policeman you're complaining about. So, he then says, I was a good boy. Yeah. So they come back and said, no case to one.
Okay, well, you've obviously had dealings with the system, but that's right, and that's obviously unfair. And the
you've got the individual police No, it's not. It's not unfair. It's because I know I do know the answer because I've gone through it. IPCC.
Yeah.
You can then have that individual.
Retired policeman. Yeah.
You've got the independent police,
Well,
haven't you?
is it independent?
It's not independent because it's back to the circle again,
that's
is it?
right. The common law rule is no man may sit in judgment in his own cause, and that includes an institution. So if the Crown's investigating the Crown, is investigating the Crown, it's not right, is it?
No. Why are we allowing this then?
What Tracy has done, she's circumvented this binder, and what she's done, she's taken advantage of the grand jury system. So if you want to learn about grand juries, look at my video online. John Hurst grand juries at Telford. I keep advertising myself, but you did ask me to. And I'm not the first, I'm not the last, but I'm the one I know about. That's why I'm asking you to look at my stuff. The grand jury is the traditional method of bringing an official to account. And it comes from I've already said every person has a common law duty to maintain the peace. And if you find out about a crime and you don't tell the authorities about it, you commit offence yourself. Now, this offence is known as misprision. It's specifically maintained as misprision of treason.
Should we be doing this with the RMPs?
Well, yeah, that's right. We know about it. We should do something about it.
So if you don't
and one thing we can do about it is go and tell the authorities. But we've already established that
we've told the authorities.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and nobody responds.
So we could be imprisoned if we don't.
Yeah, exactly.
Misimprisonment.
Yeah. If the Crown wanted, they could imprison us. Now, misprision of felony, ordinary crimes except treason. Was infringed by the Criminal Law Act 1967. Lots of bad things happened in 1967. It's the run-up to Europe. If you recall the American Second Amendment, the right to bear arms shall not be infringed. That refers to the concept of it's a common law right. Blocking it, taking away, obstructing it doesn't mean it goes away because it's a right. It's just infringed. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So even if Parliament tried to take away the common law rights of the subject, they haven't because they can't because the Queen said she wouldn't. Day one when she got the job. So a grand jury is composed of a minimum of 12 because the common law rule is 12 may judge one. A minimum of 12 respectable citizens from the area where the crime happened, so that they apply local standards. If a victim complains to 12 people like that, and they agree that there's a case to answer, then that produces a document called a presentment. And a presentment is a written instruction to the Crown that this grand jury, it can be between 12 and 23, that's the common law standard. It's always less than 23, so that 12 is a majority. The grand jury's presentment can be given to the Crown, and the Crown is required, on the same basis we talked about Bushell's case, didn't we?
Yep. Bushell's case.
A jury verdict is binding on the Crown. In this case, presentment is an instruction to the Crown to have a petit jury trial, which is a jury of 12. The grand jury is an investigation, only hears the prosecution evidence. It's not a conviction, it's a finding of a case to answer. A petit jury, small, 12. The rules of natural justice apply, and particularly the last one, which you recall, is that any defence that a person put forward has got to be thoroughly investigated and taken on board. And a
person's got to be standing there and give all their evidence,
yes,
not
right.
by video link.
Yeah.
And they've got to be standing.
Yeah, so the jury can see them. Yeah. A grand jury was held in it was Northwood Cricket Club, wasn't it? Not Rugby Club, Cricket Club. About 3 or 4 months ago, Tracy and the other bereaved parents made statements, and the statements were read out, and they gave evidence. And the jury of 12 of their peers decided that there should be a presentment to the Crown.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Were you there then?
Yeah. I organised it, so time goes on. Now, the lad who'd run down the children and then run away and then told a load of lies.
That's why it's so horrible, because these people have lost their loved ones, their boys.
Well, the seriousness of the gravity of what happened, and the gravity of overthrowing centuries of our law and our ancestors. The older a common law rule is, the stronger it is, because the more generations of our ancestors have upheld it. And overthrowing, jury trial probably goes back 2,500 years to the Iron Age, in various forms. So what happened was, last Tuesday, the chap who'd only been investigated for traffic, he was given a 14-year sentence, which is the maximum for death by dangerous, 3 times death by dangerous. He claimed he'd pleaded guilty. He was entitled to a discount. So the hearing was in the High Court in the Strand, and we arrived, and there were about 50 people in the crowd, maybe 60, and the majority of them got into the public gallery. It's quite unusually large, wasn't it, the public gallery? Yeah. Lo and behold, the Lord Chief Justice is sitting. A man called Sir Brian Leveson, senior judge of the
Leveson?
Yeah, senior
As
judge.
in the Leveson inquiry?
As in the Leveson inquiry. I can only tell, I've only ever seen him in action once.
The phone hacking?
He was a very competent judge. He was competent and fair. Maybe because he was in front of 60 people that knew what the score was, but he was competent and fair, and it was a brilliant example of judgemanship, I must say. The first thing that happened was that Tracy said, "You in the wig, in the big seat, we're not scared of you," and he blinked. The way they do. Then Tracy made the observation, "Why is that called a dock? We're not on a ship, are we?" And what she was referring to is the imposition of maritime law on admiralty law on land. And so on. Now, I've been in courts where judges have immediately started throwing people out for contempt of court and having them committed to the cells and that sort of thing. Yeah. But he rose above it and he pretended to read his papers and let them go on for about 5 minutes. And they made all their legal points, and you could see they were hitting home about the injustice of what had happened to them and how serious it was. He then spoke to them. He spoke to them as individuals. He spoke to Tracy and one of the other fathers. What he did was he heard their grievances, their petition, and he addressed them. One of their grievances, for example, was that there was a lady judge assisting him. There was a male judge on the left, lady judge on the right. I forget the name of the male judge. The lady judge, she was recognised by one of the fathers. And in actual fact, he referred to her. She was the lady judge who dealt with Darren Osborne, the man who ran over the people outside the mosque. Got 42 years in prison. And when she gave that sentence, she said, "I've got the Justice Department sentencing guidelines before me, but my conscience says this is serious. He should have 40 years." The hearing where the lad in question on this occasion was sentenced, the father had actually brought that up, and she said, "Well, you've got sentencing guidelines, but your conscience can require you to do differently." And he was praising you. He wasn't criticising. He was praising the lady judge. Whether 42 years remains to be seen. I dare say his lawyers are representing him.
Don't they halve the sentences anyway?
The time served is always a half, and that's a ploy to maintain order in prisons. Because if a prisoner knows whatever he does in prison, his sentence is not going to be extended, then he'll play up.
Sure.
But yeah, that's the reason for it.
It's on good behaviour, isn't it?
It's acceptable.
So basically, this gentleman has been allocated 14 years, and he's had the audacity to complain. And the same judge, in the meantime, for I don't know the details of the other case.
She was lenient on another occasion, but the point that the father was making was that judges don't have to follow guidelines; they only need to follow the law. And if the sentence is what it is. So the next thing that happened was they go out to consider this, and Tracy had engaged the services of me to hand in an application for a voluntary bill of indictment. So I'll tell you what the voluntary bill of indictment is. I only discovered it to my shame about 3 years ago, and prior to that I wasn't
voluntary
there.
Bill of indictment.
Voluntary bill of indictment. Voluntary bill, yeah. Now, the grand jury system goes back to time immemorial, and originally there were no police force. There might be common informers, but responsible citizens in each county were expected to tell the king if there had been any crimes, and that's where this concept of misprision comes from. And if you look in the history books, it was a regular thing, and the king would go to a county, call up pre-designated people who are given this responsibility. There'd be a court hearing, and they were required to hand over any criminals. Do you know of any criminals that happened in the last year? And of course, the threat was they'd be in trouble if they didn't, because they were hiding a crime. And that's the way law enforcement was done. You didn't need a police force. You've got the locals to enforce themselves. Whoops.
That's why you've got all these. Well, you can see it in the Welsh. She's Medig, or she's the courts. That's where they'd go to the courts.
That's right. So in its modern form, the grand jury is just a continuation of the system. Now, the document that a grand jury produces is called a presentment, and any High Court judge, on application, can start a criminal trial. Okay. The traditional way of starting a criminal trial is that either a policeman or a private prosecutor, RSPCA being a good example, they regularly prosecute people for cruelty to animals. They go to a magistrate court and they fill in a form called information. They tell the magistrate what's happened. The magistrate says, "Oh, bad business. Have a summons, and then we'll have a hearing." But the procedure when you've got a presentment is you go to the High Court judge and serve it on him, and he's supposed to consider it and start the case. And that's what's happened with the three boys. That's what's happened with the three boys.
So the end of the story is?
Well, the end of the story is the Metropolitan Police are now reconsidering. Instead of complaining about them, what the Tracy case has thrown up is an individual policeman that's ignored anything other than traffic has breached his oath of office, has breached his obligation at law, and this is the Commissioner of Metropolitan Police has been given the opportunity to put things right.
Yeah.
If not, it'll be tested by that constable going before a court,
misconduct of office.
Yeah, and the penalty of misconduct of office is life imprisonment potentially.
Really?
It's serious business, yeah. Yeah.
Because you're an officer of the law.
Yeah.
That's why I guess we got in this country to have the police officers rather than army officers.
It could also be regarded as perjury because constables take an oath. Any Crown office holder, a politician even, MP, takes an oath of office, and if they're proven to break it later, that's an offence of perjury because the assumption is if they break an oath, it must mean they didn't mean it when they took it.
Is that why you had to
they
wait
lied
till
when they
he
took it, so it's
retired?
perjury. You see the concept?
So we could level that probably against most of the MPs.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
Sorry, John. Is that why you had to wait till you retired before you spoke out?
It's true.
Because you
Okay.
for perjury?
So Caroline's proposition is oath breaking a crime? Well, it clearly is. Yes, that's right. Now the question is, what's the job specification for an MP? Isn't it? You've stood for being an MP, haven't you? Do you know what your job specification is?
I thought it was to serve the people in my constituency.
Well, so it's not actually. And what it was settled in the run up to the. We're going back to the beginning of this conversation. In the run up to 1688 and the Declaration of Rights, the James II has done a bunk to France. Senior members of the House of Lords want to offer the crown to Mary. They know that they get a package because Mary is married to William of Orange, and William of Orange was a shrewdy, and this is reflected in the. I
have a feeling we're going to run out of time.
Okay,
I think you need to because we're running out of.
Okay,
film.
cut long story short. If you watch the video about History's Biggest Fibs by Lucy Walsh, it'll explain what happened. And William of Orange wrote a document. It's called Reasons for Appearing in Arms in England.
So the answer is, what should I have done had I been
your job
successful?
specification is to represent the interests of your subjects, not subjects, the interests of your constituents according to your conscience.
So that was the bit that I missed off. I didn't know that bit.
Right. And of course, you can't have a contract which is unlawful. So the law relating to Crown servants is the same for all of them. 13 articles of the Bill of Rights. No Sharia courts, no criminal.
Okay.
So the answer is we're up to the top of the hour now.
Yeah.
According to your conscience,
and according to law,
and according to law, and our MPs do obviously not have a conscience.
Okay. One quick point.
They don't
and it has to be quick because
so
we've
the House
got
of
2
Lords
minutes.
should be really upholding the justice of the country and upholding.
Tony Blair is guilty of lots of things, and one is infringing the rights of lords. A lord, they inherit the title. The eldest son gets the job when the previous lord dies. The Queen writes him a nice document called a letters patent. Says, "Congratulations, you're lord of." And the lords represent property, so the lords of Westminster, Duke of Westminster, because he owns Westminster. They don't represent their constituents. They don't have any, but they represent the property interests. And a lord has two common law prerogatives. One is to be consulted by the sovereign in all her measures, and that's the purpose of the House of Lords. So all the lords get together, and the Queen's proposed to do something. Comes from the Commons, some of the stuff. And the second is to petition the Crown personally for redress of grievances. And when we talk about what happened in 2001 with the Magna Carta Society, that's what happened. The barons petitioned the Queen.
We'll
personally.
have to go through that another time. We're really out of time. I'm so sorry, but thank you so much, John and Frazer.
Thank you, Caroline. It's a lot of information. So
It is. We need to put this into another. We have to do another show. And to everybody at home, thank you so much. Sorry it had to be rushed at the end. We've run out of time, we've run out of film, and we look forward to seeing you again. I'm Caroline Stevens. please take a look at the video Stepping Stones to Awareness, which is the sister YouTube channel to the BASIS project. And thank you once again, John, and
Frazer.
thank you, Frazer. Goodbye.
Thank you, Caroline. Cheers.